Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Indian Council of World Affairs, I welcome you all to today's webinar on Indian migrants in the Gulf, coping with the double blow of oil price collapse and COVID-19. We are very happy to be doing this webinar in partnership with the Center for Public Policy Research, Kochi. We are delighted to have with us Ambassador Navdeep Suri, who would be chairing and moderating today's session. Ambassador Suri is currently a distinguished fellow and director of the Center for New Economic Diplomacy at the Observer Research Foundation. He has served as country's High Commissioner to Australia and Ambassador to Egypt and the UAE. Also, we have a very select set of panelists for today's program. We have Professor Irudaya Rajan, country's leading expert on migration, who is based in Center for Development Studies, Thiruvananthapuram. We have Dr. D. Dhanuraj, the founder chairperson of CPPR, based in Kochi. We have with us Dr. Bindhulakshmi Pattadath, who is associate professor at the Advanced Center for Women's Studies at Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai. Before I give floor to Ambassador Suri, let me quickly tell our attendees that you can ask questions by logging into chat as guest option at the bottom of the page in front of you. Type in your name and accept the terms and conditions, and you can begin typing your questions. May I now request Ambassador Suri to kindly conduct the proceedings, sir.
Thank you, Deepika, and a warm welcome to the panelists on this very special session. I'm delighted to be in this position of trying to chair it and moderate it. My only claim to fame for this is the fact that until last September, I was India's ambassador to UAE. And that's an interesting country when you talk about migrants, Indian migrants in the Gulf. And because of the roughly 8.9 million or 9 million Indians who are residing in the Gulf, 3.42 million are now in UAE. The International Organization of Migration, in its 2018 report, described the India-UAE migration corridor as the world's second busiest after the Mexico-US corridor. And I used to joke with my Emirati friends that in the case of Mexico-US, President Trump wants to build a wall. But in the case of India-UAE, if there's one demand, then that is for more flights and more connectivity and more bridges between the two countries. When you look at the macro picture for the Indian migrants in the Gulf, of the roughly $80 billion that we got in remittances last year, about half come from the Gulf, of which almost $19 billion came from UAE alone. And when you look at it, that if one person's remittances are supporting and on an average a family of 4 or 5, you can really see the impact that it makes on the ground. And all you need to do is visit Kerala and see the impact of migrant remittances from the Gulf in particular. I should say that for me, being in UAE was really also getting to know Kerala much better because, being from the northern part of the country, it's sometimes easy to not get to know other parts of the country as well. So my own respect for the manner in which the state of Kerala looks at the whole issue of its migrants grew enormously during the course of my interactions, both with Government of Kerala officials and also with the community organizations who are incredibly well organized and really passionate about doing whatever they can to serve the community. So, when everybody's applauding Kerala's success in handling the COVID-19 issue, I keep saying, and also when we were preparing and I was talking to some of my colleagues in Ministry of External Affairs about the upcoming exodus of migrants from the Gulf, I was saying, please learn from Kerala because they are the best organized when it comes to some of these issues. I just want to say that there's sometimes a tendency to conflate migrants only with workers, blue-collar workers, and that is not the case. So while our estimates are that of the 9 million odd Indians in the Gulf, perhaps as many as 70% might be blue-collar. But the fact is that in UAE alone, you also have 33 Indian billionaires, dollar billionaires, and hundreds of multimillionaires, and an entire professional class of bankers and senior management professionals who are integral to the success of that country. So when we look at migrants, broadly speaking, I think it's important to look at all of that. And on the specific theme of today, which is the double whammy of the lower oil prices and the COVID-19, I think it's important to recognize that that impact, while obviously, as we are seeing in India itself, is most acutely felt by those at the bottom of the pyramid. But the upper parts of the pyramid are also affected by it. There's a strong expectation that there will be business failures. The laws dealing with bankruptcy in some of these countries are pretty fragile. And so that adds to the pain. And each time an Indian business goes down, many hundreds of workers lose their jobs with that. So it's all part of that equation. From our side, I just want to add one last point before handing it over to the panelists, which is that I think Mrs. Sushma Swaraj probably should get credit for her single-minded focus on how do embassies look after our migrants in the Gulf in particular, and in other parts of the world, to create a culture of empathy towards our blue-collar workers, and put in place systems that enable embassies to respond more effectively in situations like the ones that you're finding yourself in today. Among various things that we did, one was the whole e-migrate project, which tries to create a regulated channel of migration to the Gulf countries for our blue-collar workers, to see whether it can be integrated with the labor portals of UAE or Saudi Arabia. And a lot of work has been done on this. The other, to me, something that I spent almost 2 years on, and we put a lot of effort into it, was a program to map skills and harmonize skills. So we did the world's first skill mapping project between a labor source country like India and a labor recipient country like UAE. And we identified 16 vocations where our skills could be mapped to UAE requirements, and the certificates issued by our institutions are acceptable to UAE authorities, so that there's some kind of a premium that our workers get when they go with certain amount of experience and skills and a certificate, rather than enter the workforce at the bottom of the value chain. And I'm very happy that the first pilot project has been done successfully, and now Saudi Arabia has also come on board on that. And the reason I'm saying this is that a suggestion that I made to government about a month back was that because we were expecting this exodus from the Gulf, I suggested that can we also look at the skill profiles of those who are coming back and create a central portal for them in government, which can be accessed by employers around the country. Because some of the people who are coming back have skills that are in short supply in the country. And particularly at a time when everybody in the industry is complaining that migrant workers have gone back to their homes and villages, can this provide you some kind of a cushion and also mitigate the pain of those coming back from the Gulf? Just in terms of numbers, as of earlier this week, 300,000 plus had registered to come back to India. Don't know how accurate that number is, whether it's going to be more or less. because the registrations are still growing, but also some people who are registered are not showing up. But I'll share with you that a real problem that our colleagues are facing today is not at that end in Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Sharjah or Muscat or Doha. It's when they come back here. And that's because of the attitude that some of our state governments are taking on the quarantine procedures. It is, just think about it, when we look at Indians wanting to come back, we don't segregate them by state. So if a flight is coming back to Kannur or Calicut, it could also be carrying people for Tamil Nadu, whose destination is Tamil Nadu. And that's where states are making it really difficult for us. They don't want to take people from other states for quarantine, etc. So there are real practical issues that we are facing. There are some companies who have large number of employees, 3, 4, 5,000 employees each, who want to come back. And they say, we'll charter the flights to bring them back. But then if you charter the flights, that flight has to come to one location. It could be Delhi, it could be Mumbai, or it could be Trivandrum, it could be Chennai, it could be Bhopal or anywhere. But you can't expect that charter flight to disaggregate people according to state. And that again is a challenge that we are facing as we deal with this. So I just want to leave those few opening remarks with our wonderful panelists. And without further ado, hand over to Professor Rajan, who, as Deepika mentioned, is probably one of our leading authorities on the issue of migration. Professor Rajan.
Thanks, Ambassador Puri. Let me start with, as you started with some numbers. The Ministry of External Affairs talks about something like 9 million people in the Gulf, which you quoted it. But I think we are underestimating their numbers. I think I would put probably 10 million because I have done survey in both Kerala and Tamil Nadu. Kerala has 2.3 million people in the Gulf and Tamil Nadu has 1.2. So you have 35 lakhs from only 2 states. So you can imagine people going from other states like what is called Gujarat, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Telangana. So there are many other states which are also sending them. So we have to talk about something like 10 lakh migrants we are talking about, not 10 million migrants. And the second point I want to make at this point is that out of the 83 billion came last year, Gulf almost sends 56% of the remittances. That means we are talking something like 10 million people sending half of the remittances to the India. I think this is the number we are talking about. That's why the webinar, when we talk about Gulf migration, I think it's an important point of discussing these people. Now there are 2 more points we should talk. One is that how many are likely to come? I think that is the biggest question everybody is asking. Of course, I have been asked every day how many people will come. But I think what is going to happen now, right now we have no regular flights. We have only the flights which are, the Indian government is sending the flight. So I told them, we are seeing only the trailer of the movie. The full movie of return migration, you have to wait maybe until September, October. You are only seeing the teaser. Some flights are coming in. But please remember, NARCA has asked the Kerala people to register who want to come. And the data clearly indicate we are expecting between 10 to 20% of the Indians from the Gulf will return. Because out of the 4 lakh people registered in Kerala, 60,000 people said they have lost jobs. So you have a category called lost jobs. So 60,000 people for 4 lakhs. And you put that number to the whole India, we are talking about something between 10 to 20 lakhs. And Kerala itself will get 3 lakhs. We are predicting Kerala government, it is going to be 6 lakhs, but I am begging with them, no, 6 lakhs will not come, because even if they come, what they will do? So it's not just coming down. They will, there is nothing we are ready to offer for them. We have no, we are not going to welcome them. Please come, we have a job, please take over. We have already job crisis. We already have demographic dividend. So, it's something which we have to think about that. So 10 to 20% people are likely to come. Now, you have rightly said, you cannot put them in one basket. You cannot put all the return migrants into one basket. I think this is where we have to talk about policies, program, financial packages. We cannot put them. I cannot put all the 10 to 15 million lakhs people coming, all need some money, all need some loans. I am telling to the Kerala finance minister, no need. So you have to diversify this, what is called the 20 lakhs. Or take the example of Kerala, we are talking about 3 lakhs. Now please remember, I have studied the global crisis in 2008. I have studied the Nidakat crisis. I have also studied a little bit on the Kuwait war. If you look at that, most of the migrants who come back, they do re-migrate. So when you talk about return migration, there is some people will re-migrate. I think we should talk about how to package them and send them back, because the re-migration is part of the return migration. For example, today, even pre-COVID, we had close to 15 lakh people 15 lakh are already here. Return migration is a phenomenon to Gulf. If you go to Gulf, you have to return. I think that is the rule of the law. They don't become PR, they don't become green card, they don't even get blue card like Europe. So they have to come back. So when they have to come back, we have already 15 lakhs Malayalis are already back in Kerala. In fact, we have 6 MLAs in the assembly who are return migrants. I met them separately. They belong to different political parties. When I told one of the MLA, he told me, these are the 6 people who won the election. Contested will be many more. Because anyone return migrant can contest the election. They have a vote bank. But, so we have to do at least 30% of them will go back. It will be true in Telangana, it will be true in Uttar Pradesh. What we have to do, we have to provide them what I call them, you have to upgrade their skills. India has a huge project called Skill India. So we have to use this opportunity to return migrants who are coming back. We have to connect with the Skill India program. So we have to retrain them. We have to give them multiple skills so that at least 30% of the return migrants re-migrate. I think this is something to be one of the basic policy of the return migration, rehabilitation, reintegration, re-migration. I think this is one policy suggestion we should discuss more, we should talk more, and we should talk to the Indian government, state government. Please connect this return migrant with Skill India program so that they can re-migrate. The second group of return migrants, which are very important, today I heard even our Prime Minister of India talking about package for migrants. Everybody talking about migrant. COVID-19 brought the migrant to the limelight. Otherwise, we were talking only remittances. First time we are talking about migrants. Otherwise, we never talk about them. We only talk about money, money, money. But the migrants we are talking about, I think that is what the COVID did for all of us. Internal migrants, international migrants. So second part of the people which I have seen in Kerala for the last 20 years is some people who are coming at the time of COVID are what I call them eventual return. That means they went to Gulf, they made some money, they want to return, maybe next year they are postponing. So they are coming back because of the COVID fear. And that will be something like 30%. That we call them eventual return migrants. Today or tomorrow they have decided to come back, they have earned some money. Now, please remember, these people have some money. They are not looking for anything from the government. They have something like 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs saving over the last 8-9 years in the Gulf. Even the low income, low skilled workers. But what the problem is that they don't have any viable project to invest. They all put the money in the bank. And the bank interest is very low because after return, they may live another 15-20 years. So we have to advise them to invest the money in a good proposals. So the government, both private and public, should come and advise them, put your money in a proper place so that you can, remaining your years of life, you can be self-employed, you can do some type of activity like maybe the Gulf area or the tax waiving. We should think of some program for them, but they don't need financial support. They have already some money they saved while they were working in the Gulf. This is the second group of people. For them, Indian government and state government only to facilitate them their return. They need facilitation, nothing more. But the third group of people where we have to really talk about rehabilitation is the post-return migrants. According to the survey done by us, saying that every time 25 to 30% of the return migrants who are coming to India they are not getting their visa extension, they are losing jobs. That means all migrants go with a dream and they are not fulfilling their dream. They are coming back without fulfilling. They are called the forced return migrants. For them, we have to talk about how to rehabilitate them. And one of the things Kerala government is talking about, I think Indian government also should discuss about that. With the support of the central and state government, we should decide policies and programs for return migrants. It can be a one-time payment because people are not able to pay money even to come back because they have lost everything. So we should talk about financial transfers, to talk about soft loans. We should again talk about giving them skills so that they can be employed because there will be a lot of mobility within the states. For example, some of the interstate migrants who are in Kerala, they may even leave. So there may be availability of jobs in Kerala. Is the Kerala returnees ready to take those jobs available in Kerala? I think this is something we should look at it. The third and final point before I complete. Yeah, third and final point which I want to make it, when we are talking about return migration today, we have to include two important points. One is the return migration is happening because of the COVID-19, because of the localization policy in the Gulf. Third is the oil price down. And then fourth, which is the new factor, is coming in amnesty. Please remember, Kuwait has announced already amnesty. I am sure within 6 months, all countries will announce amnesty. Because I have seen many people in the Gulf. I told them, why can't you come? You have no paper. They will say, I will go next amnesty. Because of the COVID-19, we will get additional return migrants. Because they have no paper and they cannot stay there because if they want any medical emergency, Ambassador Suri should probably will be telling us, if somebody going to the hospital without a proper document, he will not be allowed to get into the hospital. I have seen in some of the places. So they will come because of the fear. Undocumented migrants, I will put at least 10% of the Indians are undocumented. If the amnesty is announced, they will come. So we should give the additional factor which is not talked by everyone, and it is true with women, it is true with men, unskilled, semi-skilled, even engineers who are overstaying there. I have seen them. I met one of the family. He said, I am undocumented, my wife and my children. So we have families of undocumented. I think they will come now. We have to help them out because they are holding Indian passport, and we should help them in the time of trouble. I will stop here and let us look for some questions and some discussion later. Thank you, Ambassador Puri.
Thank you, Professor Rajan. Some very, very useful points that you've made. I'll just comment that UAE had its big amnesty about a year and a half back, and we were actually surprised that not many people showed up. And the reason for that, as compared to Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, for example, and the reason for that, as we were given to understand, including by Emiratis, was because we have had systems in place to enable the repatriation of people who are undocumented and who have lost jobs and so on. The fact that we are able to buy a ticket and to give them a subsistence and send them back through our Indian community welfare funds means that we've got a running pipeline as opposed to other countries. And the Saudis, of course, had their amnesty scheme a couple of years back, and that led to a return of a very sizable number from Saudi Arabia as well. So Kuwait hadn't done, and so certainly Kuwait is a case in point, and Oman might be as well, I think, as the countries of concern. But let me hand over to Dr. Dhanuraj, who is chairman of the Center for Public Policy Research in Kochi.
Thank you, Ambassador Suri, and thank you, ICWA, for giving me this opportunity and also giving an opportunity for CPPR to partner in this webinar. My studies, more or less my academic and policy studies, are related to the political economy. And most of my political economy studies in Kerala, most of the papers I've done with Kerala, in the Kerala context, eventually led to the migration connect. So what I'm going to discuss is how the migration is going to influence and impact Kerala's economy and political economy especially. I think we should not forget, I think Dr. Rajan has given a very interesting introduction. In fact, I started there. around 3 million population migrants, especially in Gulf countries. And the remittance that we were receiving for the last so many years, it was it was growing all these years, but now it shows some decline in the last few years. So from some 13,000 crores in I would say 1996, when we had around 14 lakh migrants there in Gulf. Today we have around 3 million and we're getting around 70,000 crores. In fact, at one point of time, we had touched even 80,000 crores. So looking at Kerala's GSDP, we have got around 6,50,000 lakh crores, 6,50,000 crores. And it comes to me around, if you do a ballpark figures, it comes to around one sixth of the money of GSDP is coming from the remittance. I mean, it is accounted by the remittance. And if you look at the per capita income of every Malayali, and if you calculate the per capita remittance of every family, I think the per capita income and the per capita remittance is almost same. So that is, you're doubling up the per capita nature in the state. But more importantly, I think we should discuss not only about those 6 MLAs. I think we have a long history. I mean, of various institutions, various processes that are evolved because of the migration from the state. I'll just give you a couple of examples. If you look at health or if you look at education, I see there is a huge influence of the remittance in Kerala. The kind of system that we are operating today, everybody acknowledges Kerala's public healthcare system as well as the education system. I think we should not forget that there are also institutions. It's not only about government-run institutions, it's also government-aided institutions, which are managed and owned by private individuals. And if you look at the background of these institutions, the reasons why they set up the institution, the various factors that influence these individuals to set up these institutions, I see remittance as a major reason. This is what happened in 80s and 90s. My reading, as well, from my reading, what I understand is when migrants, people started leaving Kerala in 80s and early 90s, the first thing they've done was they started, building their houses. They started, acquiring some properties. They invested in land, they invested in houses, then they invested in, let's say, VCRs and tape recorders of that time. Then later they invest in two-wheelers. Then finally, like Dr. Rajan said, there was no other avenue for them to use. And because of the high regulatory the migrants were reluctant to put money in government projects or various other investment projects. Of course, Kerala is known for investment at that time. So what they've done is the money that they saved in their the accounts, they used to spend for the relatives and kits and kins back in home here in Kerala. They started setting up shopping complexes, for example, or mini malls in Kerala, and this actually eventually led to the urban continuum in Kerala.
Dr. Dhanuraj, any points on the returning migrants now? Because that's the theme, and we're running short of time.
To that.
Yeah.
So the point
but quickly,
is,
because we're running short of time.
The urban continuum that we have seen is because of remittance, and now when the remittance is drying, then I'm very scared of what is going to happen to the Kerala economy as such, because the institutions here in Kerala is more or less were supported and complemented by the remittance money in all these years, whether it is religious institutions, whether it is a cultural organizations, even the philanthropy. Even Chief Minister of Kerala announcing these many people have donated this much amount of money to the Kerala Chief Minister's fund. But my understanding is, if you analyze it, the liquidity in the market was more or less enhanced by the migrants. Those who were there and they were sending this money to Kerala, and the relatives were using in a very creative manner in Kerala to establish various institutions and providing liquidity in the market. The other one I would how this is going to impact the political economy. I would even say the institutions I started with, because in the political economy, various institutions, I talked about health, I talked about education. I'll just give one example. We have more than 150 private engineering colleges in Kerala, which has got something called NRI quota. The NRI quota is they are taking probably a bigger amount of money from the NRI students coming here. So what is going to happen to those institutions now once the NRI quota, the money is not there? So that is going to indirectly lead to the loss of jobs for the teachers, and also probably some of the institutions will find it difficult to sustain now. So same is the case with our health economy. There are a lot of people coming to Kerala. As a health tourism is one of the promising sectors we have, and because of the connection that we have there, even the Emiratis are coming to Kerala because they connect there. So now that connection is we are going to lose, and then again that sector is also going to be affected. Then I would the construction work. Just picking few ideas. The construction sector in Kerala, it's one of the major contributors to the Kerala state GST. Why construction was happening? Because the money that was coming from Kerala. Because the money was, you save the money and then you construct various buildings, different types of buildings, and rent it and lease it to the different people. So altogether, I see we have a problem now because blue collar job. We talked about blue collar job and white collar job. I think 70 to 70% of people who are coming to Kerala, they are like blue collar jobs. Unlike people who may come from United States or United Kingdom. So there I see a problem in terms of what is the ease of doing business for them. Because whatever we are discussing, even by the Kerala government so far, is about the administrative, from the administrative intervention. We can bring them back, we can quarantine them, then like Dr. Rajan said, we can give them some amount of money so that they can start a business there. But we are not discussing the reason, the fundamental reason why these people left Kerala in 90s and early 2000s. Because this state was not producing enough number of job opportunities for them. So now coming back, I don't see anything has changed. Significant change is not there in Kerala's political landscape in the last 20 years to ensure that those who are coming back, who could actually set up entrepreneurial activities, or those who are setting up entrepreneurial activities could absorb those skilled or semi-skilled labor who are coming back from Gulf countries. So I see we need the economic action more than the administrative action now, because administrative action we've been experiencing for the last 15 years, but the economic action is absent today. And if we are not addressing that part, I think we have a huge problem. We are going to face that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dhanuraj. In fact, your points on the economy and the political economy of the whole migrants sector. When I was in Abu Dhabi and we used to do these counseling camps regularly at the various workers' villages, one of the things that we had incorporated into the menu of the counseling camps was on financial literacy. And encouraging the workers to start saving up some money, because you had enough stories in Kerala and elsewhere of all of the savings being spent on a house or on a wedding or something, and when there's a family emergency or something happens, there's nothing in the kitty left. So it is part of our regular interaction. And a thought that I have, which I will leave for the panelists to come back later, is we also saw the images of large number of migrants from other parts of the country leaving or wanting to leave Kerala. Do you see some of those jobs being taken up by returning migrants from Kerala, or would those jobs be seen as beneath the dignity and stature of the returning migrants? But we can come to that later. So let me go to Professor Dr. Bindhulakshmi, who is Associate Professor at the Advanced Center for Women's Studies at TIS in Mumbai.
Thank you, Ambassador Suri, for this opportunity. In fact, what I want to flag here, we are going through an extraordinary times, perhaps this kind of world which we never imagined. However, what the humanitarian crisis, what we face today, I don't necessarily think it is only the impact of global pandemic, or is it the effect of the larger policies of the nation states with apathy and indifference. That's which I feel the migrant crisis, which is rolling over us, which we see today. In that sense, COVID-19 is not only a global health crisis, rather, it brings out inequalities around the world much more starkly. These crises are not new. It has always been there. We have talked about it abundantly in academic discussions, asked policymakers and concerned governments to pay attention to it. Perhaps COVID-19 is giving us one more opportunity to make it much more emphatic. The panelists before me already addressed some of the issues of return migration. However, I'm not going to flag all that issues. I want to very specifically flag only a few issues, particularly the gendered impact of COVID-19 in Gulf migration. As we know, the impact of COVID-19 is disproportionate. One of the most marginalized among migrants in the Gulf are the domestic workers. I'm trying to bring in some of my own work. I have done an intensive ethnography fieldwork among the undocumented migrant domestic workers in UAE. Many of these workers are in precarious living conditions, live within the households of their employers as living domestics or as live-outs in cramped bed spaces. COVID-19 lockdowns have brought down extra burden to many of these women workers, as it is the case with many women care workers across the globe, which we know of how care work disproportionately the burden comes to women, and particularly when we talk about the migrant domestic workers, the burden is much more. One perhaps need to read it along with the stories of gendered violence coming from various parts of the world during lockdown situation. Like many other marginalized workers in the Gulf, domestic workers face unpaid wages, forced labor, dangerous working conditions. The contexts are specific here, as they do not come under the labor law as well. As I already mentioned, impact of COVID-19 is not the same for all. It is important at this extraordinary time to emphatically articulate some of the non-negotiables for the workers, particularly workers who are in marginal positions. For example, many domestic workers in the Gulf are undocumented. As I told already, many of my own work among domestic workers talk about these precarious conditions of undocumentation. The conditions of undocumentation is not designed by the migrants themselves. Rather, undocumented or irregular conditions are created through the fault lines of our policies. Many undocumented domestics in the Gulf work as part-timers in many houses. COVID-19 definitely will throw open multiple health risks to these workers, as many stay in cramped accommodation. I know that many of them who stay in Naif area and various other parts in Dubai know that what kind of living accommodation, the kind of bed spaces where live-out domestic workers are staying. Many of them must have lost their jobs by now. On the one hand, women have to face this extra burden of care responsibilities as an outcome of lockdown. On the other hand, they are also facing problems of living conditions. Adequate living condition is a fundamental right of the marginal workers. I want to emphasize that it is not the demand only for these extraordinary times. It should be a normative demand, ensuring fair pay for the workers who have lost their jobs or who are working overtime at this crisis situation should be emphasized. How do we make sure when many domestics are under the mercy of their employers? Often it becomes difficult for workers to negotiate with their employers. And I know, Ambassador Suri, you yourself know of the situations of kafala system. Kafala system of employment makes some of these situations much more difficult and precarious. It bounds the workers in a bonded labor situation. It is time to think about many of these discriminatory practices. Perhaps, I want to emphasize this, COVID-19 is perhaps taking these discriminatory practices and make steps to systematically remove it. It is commendable that UAE has introduced amnesty for irregular undocumented workers during this time, which UAE anyway has been doing for many, many years. However, how do we make sure that workers are not stranded as there are no means of traveling back? For example, the celebrated evacuation plan of Indian government doesn't necessarily help all workers. The kind of stories I've been trying to follow up with people who are already stranded in UAE. I've been making telephonic conversations with people. So let me perhaps put it on record, my skepticism with the mission Vande Bharat. Other than invoking symbolic nationalist sentiment, I am not sure whether it is really ensuring enabling conditions for those most marginalized. Perhaps it is high time to move beyond symbolic nationalist sentiments and make our priorities much more clear. Make enabling conditions for the most marginalized. For example, I was thinking about Indian Community Welfare Fund. This is again the conversation which I have been having for last couple of weeks with migrants who are already in the Gulf. ICWA fund should be adequately and transparently utilized for those in distress. Stranded workers should be able to access healthcare, food and financial support using many of these avenues. It is important that India, together with Gulf states, to ensure these enabling situations for the workers at this time of crisis. And it is very important to ensure that workers are brought in safe, irrespective of the legal status. I want to bring in this idea of legal status much more clearly because this is one of the area of research I have been engaging for last several years. As the lives of many undocumented domestics reveal the conditions of illegality is created through a system of precarity. Can we really blame the workers for the legal status, or do we need to think about the conditions such as kafala system and others which make the condition illegal? Since 2004 onwards, I'm trying to bring a very small example for how these conditions of precariousness come in. Since 2004 onwards, we know India government has banned women below 30 years of age if they belong to ECR category. This situation has created precariousness as many women have traveled to the Gulf states as domestics without proper channel. That's what happens. At one level, there is a protectionism comes from the state, and then there is no way women can travel. They're trying to travel through other channels of migration, which one may call as illegal channels. So these are the conditions of precarity. Another issue which I want to flag here is conditions of workers, particularly those in confinement. Again, the lives of migrant domestic workers could be a case in point here. As we hear from other parts of the world as well, detainees and those in confinement face greater vulnerabilities. And let us not forget women in shelter homes in the Gulf. And then I'm again recollecting many of my experiences as women who stranded there. When world economy shrinks, the effect is disproportionately falls on those who are most marginalized. COVID-19 pandemic is informing us to think about socially sensitive policies and reimagine an inclusive world. Women migrant workers constitute 41.6% of migrant workforce globally, and when it comes to Gulf migration, the context of the Gulf, the percentage is almost the same, around 41.6, around that. This is again, I'm trying to take ILO statistics. Many of them are healthcare workers. We know that women, nurses traveling to the Gulf, and care workers, and most of them are women. So there is again a disproportionate gender and labor. Here we could see exposure to any health crisis is multifold in this context. Many of them face unemployment at this moment of crisis as well. We need to have a much...
Any final points, Dr. Bindhulakshmi?
To one more point. We need to have much more research data on the impact on some of these gendered fallouts of COVID pandemic. While we are worried about oil price in COVID pandemic, let us also remember fallouts are not the same for all. A more intersectional approach to look at migrants' lives is need of this hour, and we cannot distinguish between documented and undocumented workers at this moment of crisis, and need to deal with the
We've taken the matter up at the level of the ministers, to say that because it's a serious problem, it's a human rights problem, it should be treated as human trafficking and not just as a labor issue, because the redressal mechanisms in the two cases are different. We've taken it up with police authorities in places like Ajman, which have been hotbeds of the racket that is run. But let us also not close our eyes to the fact that at both ends of the racket, in India and in the Gulf, it is Indians who are involved. It is a profit motive which is involved. Let us not disregard the fact that it is local agents in, say, East Godavari district who are catching hold of desperate women and promising them a dream that doesn't exist. The immigration officer at the Hyderabad airport counter who knows that this person is on the ECR list and still looks the other way because of some private arrangement that may have been worked out. What we have been trying to do is document cases, make short videos which are like testimonials from the individuals concerned who have been rescued, to send the message back to their villages that this is not the bed of roses that has been promised to you. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's something that I'm very passionate about, but I can assure you that from our embassy and our consulate, we've done a lot. But the problems are systemic, and we can't fix the laws of the other country. So long as the poverty creates such a supply of desperation, people continue to try and want to go. But let me hand it over to our host, Dr. Deepika, now for her comments.
Thank you, sir. One thing that comes out very significantly from this economic health crisis is that the segmented nature of the labor market in GCC states. Now, while most of the Gulf states have announced massive stimulus packages supporting these small and medium businesses by postponing various taxes, exempting these businesses from government levies and fees, and even covering the salaries of all private sector employees, we see that the foreign migrants who've been disproportionately hit by the pandemic, they've been left out by authorities as well as the employers. UAE, which receives the highest number of Indian migrants in the region, has changed its laws to allow companies to break the work contract of non-nationals, restructure their contracts to lower salaries, and pressurize these workers to take unpaid leaves. Until recently, the immigration and gender policies pursued in these GCC states have resulted in a very highly segmented labor market, where high-paid, protected jobs are taken by nationals, and they result in a public sector plagued by overstaffing and low productivity. And there is an avoidance of low-paid private sectors by nationals. So we see a private sector which is dominated by immigrants. These policies have also resulted in distortion of education system, which fails to prepare the youth for joining the GCC youth for joining workforce or creating a vibrant and competitive private sector. So we see that private sector activity has remained concentrated in low-skilled, non-tradable sectors like construction and services, meeting the consumption and investment demands of the domestic market. And these kind of not very vibrant private markets are ill-equipped to absorb the millions of new labor market entrants who are entering GCC workforce every year. So what we see is that demographic pressures of a growing youth and female work population and shrinking oil revenue and slower economic growth that has been there since 2014, and also the leadership transitions that are happening in many of these states is leading to these national transformation plans where efforts are being made to transform these economies from a rentier economy to a knowledge-based economy. Now, it's important to see what kind of implications these national transformation plans or Vision 2030, as they are called, will have on the migrant workers. The goal of these plans remains to contribute to a more nationalized and productive private sector, which can employ the restive and increasingly vocal young men and women by offering them greater economic opportunities and ultimately rewriting the social contract, which has been based on distribution of oil wealth. Through investment in education, innovative technology, and skill training, these plans seek to increase the employability of nationals and encourage a culture of entrepreneurship, especially promote small and medium enterprises that can take advantage of a economy open to both domestic and foreign competition. So we see policies like Nitakat since 2009 have aimed at Saudiization of labor markets, where quotas enforced for hiring and training of Saudi nationals are matched by subsidies, while work permit fees are increased for recruiting migrant workers. In short run, the imperative of mitigating the fallout from this dual crisis will result in reversal of certain subsidy cuts and hiking utility fees. to help these small and medium enterprises cope up. But in the medium to long run, we are likely to see the continuation and even acceleration of trend away from policies of zero income taxes for citizens and expats. So what we are looking at is a shrinking of public sector as these states look to reduce dependence of the state on oil revenues and the economic dependence of citizens on state. So we see these programs will be implemented with greater urgency, which will have some implications for migrant workers. But we also have to understand that Gulf's tax-free environments, they've been the major appeal for attracting foreign entrepreneurs and workers. And so even the success of these national transformation plans, whether they are downsized or continue on the same trajectory, will depend on attracting talent and capital from across the world. So the challenge for GCC states is going to be how to promote the employment of nationals without imposing undue cost of doing business that would erode the competitiveness and potentially reduce growth. Another important point to remember is that while there is an increasing push for nationalization of labor markets, but in many of these GCC states, we see that the regimes actually prefer these mega projects, which are designed to enhance a country's prestige and soft power, rather than directly benefiting citizens, such as UAE's Expo 2020, which has been postponed to next year, Qatar's World Cup 2022, or the much wanted futuristic economic cities on the Red Sea coast of Saudi Arabia. So these mega projects, and coupled with growing infrastructure and service needs of a growing GCC population, means that the demand for low and semi-skilled workers is going to remain high, and we'll see that there would be increasing, there would be continuing demands for domestic workers and care workers and healthcare professionals, which is going to remain high in the long run. So my point is that while there is this exodus right now because of the government-enforced lockdown, there are a number of migrants, semi-skilled and unskilled, who are returning to their home countries. But the nature of these Gulf economies is such that despite all these national transformation plans, which are trying to nationalize labor market, I mean, it's not very hard to see that whether the mechanization of labor force or quick training of the nationals in to replace the foreign migrants is not going to be easy. So while there may be this time period when the migrants return to their home countries, in the long run, these pull factors are once again going to draw them back to the Gulf. That's it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Deepika. And I think you make a very interesting point that are we looking at secular changes taking place rather than just an episode related to COVID-19? And in the context of particularly the Saudiization program, and I mentioned that because that's the only place where you have really started seeing Saudi nationals work in retail or at the front desks in hotels or in some other positions that were traditionally seen as beneath the Saudis and were largely occupied by expats. In Oman, you've started to see some Omani drivers, taxi drivers, which might have been unimaginable a decade ago. I think there will still be constraints, but to the extent that the revenues are shrinking in these countries, the capacity of these countries to have a public sector that can absorb a large and youthful population or a growing and youthful population are going to be limited. In UAE, for example, until fairly recently, anybody could get a job in some government department or in some public sector entity. But that's no longer the case. And so the Emiratis are actively encouraging private sector to take Emiratis. And pressure is being put. I think the question will remain that are there going to be enough Emiratis willing to work at the price point in some of the lower occupations. The Saudis are showing that they already are willing to do that in certain cases, but I think for others you might have. So you may actually see a shrinkage of the overall pool of expatriate labor in some of these countries, particularly at the middle level service industry level. I want to move to the Q&A segment, and I can see that some of the most interesting questions are directed towards Professor Rajan, possibly because his presentation was amongst the most interesting. Professor Rajan, are you able to see the questions?
Yeah, I am able to see that. I would like to pick up one or two questions.
Please go ahead. Just tell us which questions you're taking. And
I am going to pick up three questions. Basically, one on what I should advise if I am supposed to advise to the government, and second will be on the oil price down, and the third one will be on the internal migrants leaving Kerala. What will happen to the situation? So let me start with the last question first. One of the things going to happen in Kerala is that we are going to get 3 lakh people going to come back. That's what my understanding based on the Tata data and our own studies based on the last 20 years. But however, COVID has brought a situation where the northeast migrants and the migrants who are very far away, they are likely to leave. Some of them have left before the COVID, some of them will leave right now. So please remember that we will have 3 lakh jobs available in Kerala, vacated by the interstate migrants. Now the point is that if the return migrants are ready to take those jobs, I think this is some question. I think we should really talk about that. If the Kerala government or any government can do something to see that there is a matching point where they can match, because many of the Kerala migrants are doing the same job in the Gulf. They may be getting extra money. Otherwise, same job. Kerala plumber is in Dubai. We are getting plumber from Orissa. So why can't the Kerala plumber can take the job? I think this is something we should look at it. That means we are talking about respect for work. If the Malayalis want to get a job, there will be jobs available waiting for them. They don't need to worry. But they may not take the jobs. I think that is something we should look at it. The second point I want to talk about is the oil price low. I am not very much worried about the oil price rise, because we have seen earlier the oil price has gone to this level and it has gone up to 110 barrel. So we have seen that. Please remember today, India has 45 airports and around 1,000 planes are parked. Car is parked, all the buses are parked, everything is parked in the country today globally. You can't see any plane playing throughout the world now. Please remember, when everybody started taking their car, bus, everything, there will be a demand for oil. So it is only a short-term phenomena. Within 3 to 6 months, probably the oil price will be double than what you are talking, because oil price is moderated. Please remember, oil producing countries, what happened? They are joining together, they are fixing the price. But we are not, as a sending countries, we are not able to fix the wages for our workers. We are not united. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Sri Lanka, Nepal, we are not united to fix the problem, because we are all fighting each other to occupy some market. So I think COVID taught us, if we can unite, sending countries can unite together so that we can solve some of the problem in the Gulf. Now the third point which I want to raise, probably what we can do if the return migrants are going to come back. I think yesterday our Prime Minister spoke about 20 lakh crore package for India to overcome the COVID and stimulate growth. He also mentioned there will be some fund will go from even the PM Care Fund for migrants. I think we should talk about, like they are talking about package for small farmers, package for small industries. We should talk about a big package for internal migrants and international return migrants. I think first time we should talk about a financial package for migrants, stranded migrants, countries of origin. It should be worked in the what is called the repatriate way. Some money should come from the community welfare fund, some money should come from the government budget, some money should come from even the Chief Minister Relief Fund. I was telling to the Kerala government, don't spend all your CM fund to buy ventilators. You can buy ventilators. Please remember, we don't want our own migrants suffering or starving in the house without food. So we have equal responsibility to provide social security for the returned migrant. I think the first thing should be a financial package. Second thing, people are not happy with Skill India, because I'm getting some comments. I can see that Skill India has not very successful. Fine, but still we can re-energize the Skill India. If we can do that, because as I told you earlier, even 2008 global crisis, people who got multiple skills, they were able to hold their jobs in the Gulf. So we should talk about that. And the third point, we should also talk about that Indian migrants are in 200 plus countries, but half of the migrants are in the Gulf. We should talk about sending our migrant to non-Gulf. Why only we are talking about Gulf? There are 200 countries in the world, and there may be new destination might emerge. COVID will bring you, even there may be demand from America, because already 1 lakh people died. And Europe. So we should not only concentrate on Gulf, we should think about beyond Gulf. I think COVID has taught us a lesson. We should talk about beyond Gulf, and the government, state government, migrant associations, NRKs, all should join together, think beyond Gulf. COVID has given a good lessons, which is think beyond Gulf.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dr. Dhanuraj, any comment that you want to make?
You asked this question whether these returning migrants are going to compensate. Even Dr. Rajan mentioned it. I am not so sure about it. At least in Kerala conditions, it is one of, first of all, I don't think all the interstate migrants have gone back to the states, because they still believe that Kerala is the most safest place to be. So part of the migrants have gone back. But now the question is, what is the attitude of state? What is the attitude of the society to those who are coming back from Gulf? I think that is going to be a crucial. That is going to be very, very crucial in this particular phase of returnees. That's what I'm going back to my earlier statement. What is the political landscape? What is the political economic landscape of the state? And also, those 70% of the returnees are blue collar jobs. They were in the blue collar jobs. So, what kind of jobs we can give them here, and how they are really willing to be here to those jobs? I think there were reasons why they migrated from Kerala. That's what I'm coming to. There were reasons why they left Kerala in the past, and those reasons are still there. I don't see those changes here in Kerala. The only thing that Kerala government is doing now is they are saying, you can register with the Norca. Norca will probably screen, orient, train, and boost the management of those professionals who want to do certain things in Kerala. I think it's not. First of all, there's a fundamental mistake I think we are making. I think we can have all these good packages, good statements, but more than that, I think we need the market intervention. I think we need market intervention, because I think we are not going to get few hundred people here. We are going to get 100,000 people coming back to Kerala. I don't think we have the state capacity to absorb all of them. Even if they absorb it, as a policy researcher, I don't agree. I do have disagreements with the way government could absorb them. Second point is, we have to revive our market. There could be demand, there could be more entrepreneurial activities, there could be more growth for the state, and also understand their money was helping us to sustain and survive all these years. Now the money is not there. So it's not about who is going to give them job. Whether they are going to get the job, who is going to give them job? That's the question now. Because those who are giving the job, they are not going to have the liquidity that they had in the past. So I think we have to have a reorientation, and the policy of the state government has to be reoriented, so that's what I come back to the point. It's not only the administrative action, we need economic action now. We need economic action. Even the various statements by the officials of the government, including the minister, chief minister and ministers here, I don't see any economic action as such. They always talk about the protectionism. You are happy to protect you. I am happy with that. We have to protect them. We have to save them, support them. But this could be there only for a few months. After that, there is a reality. And I am not so sure about how long it will take for the oil economy to revive. I believe that COVID also will lead to some other inadvertent consequences globally, so that the role played with the global economy, the oil economy, I think the role would be diminished in the coming years. So we have to find different avenues where we could, those who are going back to Gulf or elsewhere in the world, they need to find different jobs and different skill sets. It's not only about government training them, improving or upgrading their skills. It's also the market has to be there. My last point is Kerala 65% GSDP is coming from service sector, and we should not forget it. It's only 11% comes from the agriculture. And we have got around 20% comes from the manufacturing sector. And we don't have too many manufacturing units in Kerala. We have more or less depending on the service sector. So who is providing job opportunities in service sector? The providers in the service sector, the liquidity in the market, the business economy. So we need to find a balance mechanism there. Thank you.
Dr. Bindhulakshmi, there were a couple of questions on the female domestic workers. One is also addressed to me, which I can take up, but why don't you take a shot at it first?
Yeah. So, I just want to very briefly 3 points to address those questions. One, there is also this question of skilling profile. I want to say that we cannot, paint all migrants in one broad brush, so that the skilling profile then should be adequately and contextually and case to case, because female domestic workers also come up with very specific skills, and I don't understand why they are still documented as unskilled workers in all documents. So one need to think about that, and whether skilling profile women who want to come back, whether we can think about other kind of entrepreneurial activities for them. This is something which we can think about. The other question, there is something about undocumented workers and how do we ensure safety, which I want to emphasize here. The conditions of undocumented worker is not something by their own design. As you also has emphasized that it has come through certain conditions of precarity from both sending countries as well as from the countries where they work. But as I agree with you, Ambassador Suri, we cannot change the law of some other country. However, it is very important for us to look at internally, and maybe we can change our own legal positions. I still don't know why women below the age of 30 cannot travel as documented workers. It is making them in conditions of precarity. They have to wait for 30 years of their age. Most of the time, most women don't even get, there is a competition in the labor market, particularly women working in domestic spheres. So it is important to make some of those, look at some of our own legal document, make it much more clear that why should women wait until the age of 30. It is one of the reasons here would be we consider women's migration, we always conflate it with trafficking. Migration and trafficking cannot be conflated. When we think about women migration, it is not that they are always traveling as vulnerable victims. They also wanted to work and travel as rightful workers. And can we think about it? It has been a long argument. We want to relax some of these age bans, and then we are still holding on this protectionism. And I think this protectionism is coming from very patriarchal attitude of protection statement, which we need to think about. So the last point which I wanted to then bring in, look at this is none of this is not specifically about COVID-19 pandemic specificity. It has been there; these issues have been there, but it has come out much more clearly right now. So let us think about how do we look at policies which is not specific to COVID-19 pandemic, but some of the issues, and bringing much more intersectional perspective, and think about migration is not one standalone phenomenon of a broader group. There are definitely gender, class, and kind of work which they do that is importantly interlinked. So let us have much more. That's why when I'm saying, when we're thinking about a socially responsible policy, let us also think about intersectionalities. These migrants are one. So just to conclude one point, thanks thanks for the clarification for ICWA fund, which because you have first-hand experience as an ambassador. But I want to also, there are some communication, there are some comments from the participants as well. The ICWA fund, there are a lot of anxiety among migrants because now government has put up that everybody has to pay from their own pocket to travel. It's like 15,000 Indian rupees would come roughly, I guess, 1,000 dirham. Not everybody can pay, and how can we look at contextually, and is there ways of looking at ICT and make it much more transparent? I will stop here. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a lot on my plate, but Dr. Deepika, any comment that you want to make, or should I take up some of the questions?
Or you can take other questions. Well, I have just one little question. Maybe
Please.
I could answer it very quickly.
Please.
So there's a question on what this COVID-19 means for diversification plans in GCC states. I would say that there is a very strong domestic logic of regime survival to it. The fact that there are millions of young men and women entering labor market and they have to be absorbed. So in the long run, we are going to see that these states will stick to their policy of developing a more vibrant private sector, which is more dominated by the nationals. So we see that short run there might be some reversal with spending cuts and all that, but in the long run, this diversification plan will have to be actually accelerated. Thank you, sir.
Okay, on Dr. Bindhulakshmi's point, which I think relates to a lot of people on ICWF, I just want to clarify. The Indian Community Welfare Fund does not come from the Government of India. It is a small charge that we levy on every passport and visa service that we render. And that money is separately receipted and goes into a separate kitty. And that fund is audited, and that fund can be used only for specified purposes. And one of the challenges, obviously, for missions is, do you use all of that fund on a single episode like an evacuation now? Or is it something that you're going to need day after day after day for distressed workers, for people who've lost their jobs? We give them 40 dirhams a day subsidy in UAE. We can do that for a period of up to 3 months. Somebody's died, we have to send the body back to India, the mortal remains back to India. We are able to buy the ticket and do that. Somebody has met with an accident, can we pay for the hospitalization expenses? And we do all of that. So it is to be used within certain parameters, and the government, when it framed those guidelines, determined that an ambassador or consul general, what is the limit within which it can be used by the ambassador or consul general, and beyond that it needs to go back to government for approval and again utilized for certain specified purposes. And it is enormously helpful for ambassadors, for diplomatic missions to have that, because remember 10 years back when we didn't have the fund, we would feel frustrated and handicapped that we know that somebody's in distress, but there's nothing that we can do because we don't have the resources. So today we have those resources, and those resources are used very purposefully. And Dr. Bindhulakshmi, because you made this point 2-3 times, I want to emphasize it with the same degree of passion. We do not make a distinction between documented and undocumented workers. For us, an Indian is an Indian is an Indian, so long as the passport is Indian. That is the only document that matters to us. We don't look at the state, we don't look at the ethnicity, we don't look at the language, we don't look at any of those. And sometimes these issues do crop up that, oh, Kerala is getting more attention than Telangana is getting, or somebody else. And we say, no, to us, when we are overseas, it's only the passport that matters. On the issue of, because there's several questions on the female domestic workers, I want to say that yes, things are difficult, but if I had to look at a trend, then things are getting better rather than worse, because the countries themselves realize that there is reputational damage to them if there are too many cases of mistreatment or abuse. often so one particular thing that I wanted to correct you on is that until 3 years back, the broad category of personal staff, which is female domestic workers, cooks, drivers, used to fall outside the purview of the Ministry of Labour and of labour laws. But 3 years back, those rules were amended, and 2 years back now, all the domestic staff also come within the remit of labour laws. So that's a change that took place, at least in UAE. I would need to check if it has happened in other countries. One final point on this, which is on the point that you made on skills. And I think that's really important, because I think we need to look at what a country like Philippines has done and see, are we able to copy some of the best practices? Philippines, and this is not patriarchal, it's protective. We don't put any restrictions on nurses going, for example, and as you mentioned, there are tens of thousands of Indian nurses in the Gulf or elsewhere, and they do good jobs and they do earn a decent salary, and there isn't an issue. The most vulnerable category is the female domestic workers. And that's where we see how we can address their vulnerability, their precarious condition. What Philippines has done is it's put a minimum wage, and it's made training mandatory before departure. So even if you've got a job offer from a country in the Gulf, you are not allowed to board the flight unless you can show that you've been skilled and your contract offers you a certain minimum job wage, which is, I think, $600 or something in the case of Philippines. So that there's a dignified wage available to the person when they go overseas. Are we able to do that? I have advocated that this is not rocket science. Most of our female domestic workers end up in difficulty because they cannot communicate. They don't know a word of the language. They can't operate a modern appliance because they have come straight from a village, or they can't maintain the kind of hygiene that is expected in a modern society. And so very soon the conflict with the house owner or somebody begins, and the frustrations start, including lack of communication. But these are easily addressable. As part of Skill India, you could address them and then create jobs. You know, a 1 month program in housekeeping, for example, would impart many of the skills and the language that you need. And Mrs. Sushma Swaraj had started something important, which was Parishikshit Jao, Surakshit Jao. Go skilled and go safe. And I think we really need to expand upon that and develop that. I will leave it at that and say what a pleasure it's been to speak with all of you, and it's been a good learning for me as well. And let me hand the floor back to Dr. Deepika.
Thank you, sir. It's been a great discussion. Thank you, Ambassador Suri, for chairing it so smoothly, and all our panelists who've joined from different parts of the country. It's been great to have you